I'm Zach Evans. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Environment and Planning and the county's Chief Economic Development Officer. And thank you all for coming out to the Erie Arts and Cultural Advisory Board in our annual cultural funding application process. I know some of you may have been on these before. This might be your first time. Same for those of you that are online. So this might be a repeat, but it's always good to have a refresher with this very in-depth process. So thank you for taking your time tonight to be here. This is going to be the sort of run of show for this evening. After my introduction, I'll turn it over to Pat Johnson to go over the 2026 program and the 2027 overview going forward. And then Colette from the Department of Environment and Planning will do a live demonstration for the application. As those of you that have done it before know, it's pretty in-depth. And those of you that are new to this, it's good to get a live dry run of this. We are going to try and hold questions till the end, if that's okay. So if you can just jot down a question, or if you're online, maybe you can put it in the chat. But because those of you that are online versus the people that are here in the audience, if there's a question in the audience, we want to make sure that you can hear it if you're online, so it helps answer it. We only have one microphone. So if we can just wait till the end on questions, that would be fantastic. The first thing I would like to do is also put this all on your radar that Art Services Inc., ASI, is a great resource that can help organizations with general grant preparation, not just our own. Lots of resources in terms of guidance, best practices, and especially those of you that are maybe smaller entities and don't have a lot of staff capacity or are new to this world, just maybe getting up and running for a few years. ASI is a great resource. Folks online, you can see those emails. And then at the end of this, maybe we'll also try and put it on the chat if it's easier to just copy them and paste them and save them for your own files. But ASI is a great resource, and we strongly encourage you all to reach out to them for any additional assistance in other types of funding that you're exploring, or other types of questions navigating the often murky world of searching for funding and support in the not-for-profit world. So just real quick, a summary of the 2026 arts and cultural funding through Erie County. Over $8.6 million went to arts and cultural organizations in the county. And you can see our mean is up. Our average amount of funding has increased over the prior year. And in addition to this, this program is only one of the pathways over the past couple of years. And currently that the county of Erie, when I say that, I mean the county of Erie government, provides funding to arts and cultural organizations. We also have our Arts and Public Places program, which isn't the same as this, but shows the county's investment in arts and culture. We previously had our cultural capital grants. Erie County government really believes in this community, and we're so thankful for all of you online and here today. This sounds sometimes confusing that the county of Erie government is the largest funder of arts and culturals in Erie County. And we're actually one of the only counties in New York State that provide this type of support. So it is truly something that the county administration believes in, and quite literally putting our money where our mouths are. So thank you for taking the time this evening and participating. If you're new or if you're a return applicant, we are really appreciative of your time and your energy going through this process. So with that, I will turn it over to Pat.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm representing the Arts and Culture Board, and I will take you through some of the overview of the process and some of the things that might help you to fill out the application so that the review process goes more smoothly, and try to anticipate as many questions as possible up front. Right now, we're in the green phase where the applications have been released, correct? Yes, just released. The applicant briefing tonight is, and it will be available too for replay later. It'll be posted on the website. The contracts for the current year were literally, the information about them is sent out today, correct? The awards are sent out. The contracts will be followed up. So if you didn't get that email, if you applied last year, Claire can help you out with that later. And, the next steps are for you, if you have been an awardee before, you can go back in and re-up for the current year and do your application online, and then complete the application process. The level 1 date is April 15th, and the level 2 and 3, April 22nd. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those particular timeframes or those levels are in terms of dollars. From there, just a quick view of the process. The applications are reviewed once they are received by the county staff, and then as board members, we are assigned and get involved in that process as well to review a number of the applications. We've got a fairly elaborate spreadsheet process for doing that based on all of the different things that we've asked you to submit. So we do actually look at all those. So don't think you're putting something in that, nobody's going to review. And then, make some recommendations. We usually work in small groups to just ask questions. We review our own assignment, but then if we have questions, we get together and learn from each other. So we discuss those, complete that process, and then send them back into the county. And from there, all of those are collated, reviewed, and the funding recommendations come out of that. It's, again, a process staff is quite involved in to make sure that that the things that make sense and that all of the different parameters and guidelines are met. And then those recommendations get added to the budget. From there, the county executive receives the information, and the legislature reviews them, and there are sometimes changes at that level, but the board is pretty much out of the process at that point. And then we do get back together and sort of review the results before they're released. So that's just a quick overview of what the board does and where we fit into the process. Okay, presently there are 14 members on the board, and we have one vacant position that we'll be fully filling before the review process in May. And then you see we have quite a number of support. Also representative of the number of different parts of the county, which when the board is put together, that's one of the things that we try to pay attention to as well. Okay, so as part of the review process, we don't evaluate the programming content. There may be a comment or two on it, but there is a set number of areas that we look at, starting with governance. So when we look at governance, we're looking at making sure you have all those things that keep the nonprofit organized and in compliance, like bylaws, conflict of interest policies, whistleblower policies. All those kinds of things are part of the checklist. So again, we do go through them and make sure they're complete, and that becomes part of the evaluation. Management and planning is another section where you get to share information about your organization and the processes you use. Fiscal health, the finances, that's critical to any organization, and often the least favorite part for the folks running the programs and in support of the mission, but something very, very necessary. And that's my background, so that's an area where I probably get more involved than others, and help folks look at those financial statements and the things that you're asked to do. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but one of the things that you want to pay attention to is making sure that the financial pieces that you're asked for make sense in comparison to each other, right? So sometimes you get applications where the financial pieces don't resonate with each other, or they look like they were done by maybe 3 different people that didn't talk to each other. So, you've got documents internally. You have other filing that has to be done with New York State or the federal government. So just take a look and make sure that they make sense and line up before you submit those. The community impact, that'll be perhaps measured differently for different organizations, but make sure that any statistics you do have, anything you have to support how that is happening, you put it in the application. Okay, tell your story. Tell it as thoroughly and as completely as you can, so that as individuals that are maybe not as familiar with your organization are going through it, they can get a real sense of what you're doing. Right? Alignment of the programming with the mission, making sure that there's not a lot of mission creep on the nonprofit, that you are doing what your mission says you're doing, and the programming that you have in place or are going to start follows along with that. There is a recognition of Erie County piece, which should make sense to everyone. As Zach said, Erie County does a great job of supporting the arts and culturals, especially compared to a lot of other places in the state. So it's just something that that is part of the requirements for the grant. On your website, in your programs, just recognize the fact that Erie County is a funder. And then demonstrating ability to be equitable, diverse, and inclusive in their work. Again, how you do that will differ from organization to organization. The more details and the more that you supply as far as how you view that and how you've interpreted it in your organization helps a lot to be able to understand, whether you have demonstrated the ability to consider those areas, right? And the idea of these independent reviews is to help organizations become, stronger, sustainable, and that's really critical. And I'm sure everyone is addressing some challenges fiscally in the current environment. So it's more and more important to have a strong organization that has good governance and is in compliance with all of the, or at least trying to be in compliance with best practices, right? Also, the feedback process may change right now. When we get to the later section, you can call and ask for feedback. Formal feedback letters have not been supplied in the last 2 years or so. So, but if you're interested in looking at or hearing what areas where improvement might be advised, and also strengths, because we sometimes forget about that when we go through the evaluation process. We do try to also not just say, well, you could have been done better here, but you did a really good job here. So that not to focus on weakness, but also to point out strengths and where you can even elaborate more on those strengths or use them to your advantage. As far as the scoring goes, we discussed this over the last couple of years, and there was a change made last year. It was where when all of these different areas are evaluated and scored, we want a 50-50 weighting to organizational operations, which is kind of the top part of that left graphic there, and then 50% to community impact. So within that organizational operations, you've got your financial health, and won't read it all, but there's multiple components of that. So you've got the data. okay, the numbers and statistics. But then you have that opportunity for a narrative in pretty much every section. So make sure you use it. Uh, Sometimes the numbers need a little bit of interpretation from your end as well, or explanation, maybe is a better way to put that. If there's something unusual or something that maybe was asked by your board or you asked that question, explain it, and that will also save some of the follow up. So uh, don't be overly brief. Okay? You don't want to write volumes, but explain or as anything that you feel would stand out in either positive or negative ways, so that the comparisons make sense. Same with governance. If there's anything unusual in your governance structure, if you change your board size or um, took a different approach in some of the areas, mention that, and the attachments that support it, should all be there, which is, I think, part of having the complete application. Things like conflict of interest policies, if you haven't sent them out to your board, don't have current ones, that's something you could start accumulating right now. Right? If you've changed bylaws, put the new bylaws in. Right? Management and planning. Again, what are you looking at? What are your strategies? What new programs are you possibly considering? Any of those kinds of things would be part of that section. So numbers, but narrative to help interpret those numbers. And then, the services and programs, you're probably have core programs that you're continuing. Did you add any to that? Did you discontinue any? And the a little bit of the thought process behind those. So, and reach and impact is always something that is important, and how you measure that will very possibly be different among all the organizations, but that you are measuring it and doing the best that that you're able to provide some insight into that, right? And then if there's something that you feel wasn't covered in the or covered adequately within all the questions you're asked and all the things that you're supposed to submit, there's your chance, okay, to elaborate, to put a narrative in, to add something, whether it's your organization received recognition at some level for doing something really well. Those are the scoring components that we use. Okay, so some tips and best practices. Okay, respond directly to each question. It may be time for a fresh set of eyes to go through it and see whether or not we've, you might have not had something answered before, or maybe you want to answer it differently, or something changed. And sometimes when we fill out forms and applications year after year, we don't always remember that maybe something changed. Do you have, but you're going to just stop sharing. Oh. Um, avoid repetition. So if you've covered something in one section and you either if you feel it's relevant again, you can refer back or, mention it, but you don't need to say the same thing over and over again in the different sections. So try to address the specific question, or you can reference it back to the prior section where you already may have felt you answered some of that. And then be consistent. Again, my main area is finance, so I'm more likely to notice inconsistency there perhaps, but take a look, or again, have someone else perhaps just review the application to see if it makes sense to them before you submit it. So you want to be consistent, make sure that time periods match up, and if there's any differences in maybe you don't have your latest tax return yet, or your 990. So, you might have different years within your application submissions. Just note that so that it'll help things to make sense for the reviewer. What's your vision? So the applications here for the 2027 year. So where are you thinking your organization will be going by that point? Are you strengthening current programs? Are you looking at new programs? Are you paring back some of the things you're doing? But what's the goals and vision for that particular time frame? And how are you working on getting there now? Oops. All the documents you're asked to submit, just make sure that they are legible and clear as you scan them. Some of the bylaws or other documents might not be brand new, so just pay attention to that. As I said, we go through and look at them, so it's not just an exercise that you go through. And make sure you've got the most recent one. So if you say you've amended your bylaws in 2025, make sure it's the amended ones that you put in and things like that. Final documents are required. So in other words, if you have financial statements from your CPA that are in draft form, those are not something that are acceptable. It has to be that final version. Okay, or the tax return or amended bylaws have to have been approved by the board. So anything in draft, leave aside. If you feel it's important to mention that you've been working on them, that's fine. But we need the final documents that are in place by the time the application is due. Okay, I think that last one I've just covered. And then make sure you read the directions. Even if you've done this before, just make sure you take another pass here and there. I think there have been any particularly major changes. There's a couple things on the next slide that I'll go over, but do a reread of the instructions as you're working through it. The recording will be available for you, and Colette's going to take you to do a live demo of the application, so you can always replay that. And then there is a application guide, and you have the staff available to answer questions as well. Okay. And I guess overall, don't wait until too close to the deadline. The sooner you start, even if it's just getting some of accumulating the documents or reviewing what you've done before and making sure that you're updating it and you've got all of the components that you need. Or if you want to present something differently, you've got time to think about it. So for 2027 in the application, there have been some clarification, updates and rephrasing of some questions, but nothing that changed what we were looking for, just trying to make it a little bit more clear on based on some of the answers that were received. The question on the acknowledgement of funding feedback has been eliminated since those feedback letter for right now. Okay, how the feedback was addressed since you, other than if you called and had a conversation, you didn't get a feedback letter. So decided to put that one aside for right now. But there's another question that was added in the financial information section. Some of you have had audits by the comptroller's office and received monitoring reports. It's an ongoing process, so it is somewhat random in terms of which entities are audited in which years. But if you have had a county comptroller audit and you have a monitoring report, there's just questions in here now about how you addressed it. Right? So that was something that we felt organizations should at least address, and added that in there. So if you haven't had one yet and don't have a report, then you can say so there. But the organizations that have had it, the reports are on the county website. If you're not sure, or most of the time you would probably have received that directly, but if you're not sure, they're on the website and can help you with that too. Okay, so not too much different from the past, right, if you are a recurring funder or requester of funds. Okay. Okay, there are 3 levels of grant requests: less than or equal to 50,000, then between 50 and 200,000, and over 200,000. So if you are applying for level 1, that amount that you are asking for has a maximum of less than or equal to 20% of your budget. So if you had $100,000 budget, 20,000 would be the max that the ask should be in the application. And the rest of it, very similar. You can apply for whatever level you want. You not be, if you're a large organization, it doesn't mean you have to apply for larger amounts of money. You can complete whatever level of application, and we'll see in a minute what the differences are. So the dollar amount that you're applying for will determine which level you are at for the application. Okay, and are many of you new applicants in the audience? At least a couple. Services in Erie County, 501c3. So there are other nonprofit organization 501s, but your organization has to be a 501c3. So not a C6, which is usually a membership organization, and there's a variety of others. Being registered with the New York State Charities Bureau is something else that's required, and I think we're pretty good now, but there were a few smaller organizations that didn't necessarily realize they had to do that. So the New York State Charities Bureau registration is required for most. If you are exempt from that, then you need to explain why. Right? And we need a copy of the submitted IRS tax filing, whatever that might be. If you are, and there's the small print at the bottom tells you more about that. If you are an organization with a very small budget, 50,000 is the number there, and file what used to be called the postcard, you'd have to go online and do it now, the 990N. That would be what you would show evidence of. The next level up is a 990EZ or a full-blown 990. So those are the ones that would be appropriate. If you're filing a PF, a 990 PF, that is not, you're not eligible because that is a foundation, indicates a foundation. I think the other piece to that is your organization also has to be primarily arts and culture, not we don't fund programs that might be an arts or cultural program within an organization that has a different mission, or is maybe a social services organization that has a program for, that works with art. So the focus of the organization needs to be in the arts and cultural area. And the second, or the last three bullets, give you some definitions of what that involves. If you've all applied before, then you're pretty well aware of what happens there. Right? Okay. All right. This slide, which again you'll have, and it's also these categories are on the website. The level 1, right? You can see what you are required to submit. And then level 2 adds a strategic plan to the requirements, as well as having the slightly higher funding between 50,000 and 200,000, and then over 200,000. There are additional requirements with the strategic plan, and typically those organizations would be filing the audited financial statements. A audited financial statement is a particular type of financial engagement with a CPA firm. It is has a technical definition, and if you're not sure if your organization has it, you can take a look at the financials, and that will let you tell you. The level 2 applications normally need a reviewed set of financial statements, again, done by a CPA, not as intense and usually not as expensive as an audit, but it does provide some independent assurance on the financials. And if you're down in level 1, right, internal financials, management prepared are okay. You might have an outside accountant or CPA compile, and that's a very specific terminology for financial reports. Those would also be acceptable. But those are the primary, the financial area, and then strategic plan are the two main areas where those levels are different. Right. Right. And then last here, what can you use the grants for? And this is one of the, I guess I'll say few, since I haven't seen too many other ones, that operating support is where this grant is focused. Many of you, especially larger organizations, deal with a lot of grants that have specific purposes or are restricted. This grant is eligible for the general operating support. That's what the use should be. So things like salaries and fringe benefits, rent, utilities, program costs, office supplies, things like that are all eligible. But when you apply for the grant and you say what you're going to use it for, then when you add the pieces of how you used, if you've been a recipient in the past, how you used it, those things should match up. So think about where you will best be able to use the money that you're asking for, and then identify those areas. But you don't have to. It isn't technically, it isn't restricted funds as you may have in many of your other grants. What you can't use it for are capital projects or improvements. Okay, that's not covered by the grants. offsets against accounts receivable. I don't see too much of that. Some of you may have some activities outside Erie County as well as inside Erie County. So your dollars from the county are not permitted to be used to support those sorts of activities. And then no regranting or delegation of the funds to somebody else, right? And I guess the caveat, funding requests aren't guaranteed. The application, there is a, I call it pretty robust application review process. Having be my fourth time going through them, there are lots of pieces that the board looks at, everything that you've submitted, and takes it seriously in all these areas of financial management, governance, and programming. So we have a pretty good, more holistic view of the organization in order to be able to hopefully grant your requests. Okay, so I think that's all of my part. Colette, I'm going to take them through the live demonstration.
Right. Hello, everyone. I'm Colette Ballesteri. I am the primary staff support for this program this year. So I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to pull up our Erie County.gov website that has all of the cultural resources on there. I'll show you, what is available to you while you are filling out the application, and then the application itself. Okay. Okay, so for starters, for our convenience, you type in erie.gov/cultural. It will take you right to our website. Oh, and it's not sharing, so that doesn't help you guys. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Is it still on with the WebEx? Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, so now that everyone can see it, if you type in erie.gov/cultural, it'll bring you right to our website. On the website itself, if you are a new applicant, I advise you to go to how to apply. I know it didn't seem like anyone in this room, but if anyone online is new, I recommend you go to how to apply, review the eligibility requirements, and then you submit an applicant or an account request. So that account request will get sent right to myself, and we'll be able to take a look and determine your eligibility. Have if then we can set up account. If you're not, then I will hear some information throughout the presentation here. So for returning applicants, what you'll do is you'll go right. And on this page, we have a lot of different resources. So the first, for instance, is the IQs, so common things that we've seen throughout the process that applicants have submitted, and we've made. So funding level information. So Pat will to go during the presentation, but if you have any questions you would like to apply for, or what documents are required for the different levels, you'll find that here. Skip over the application. I want to draw your attention to the question docs. So I even received a call from an applicant today who was asking, do they have to go into the application itself to start working on the application? And that's not the case. So these are all Word documents that have the pertinent questions for level 1, level 2, and level 3. So if you download the Word document that is related to the application level that you are applying for, you can take a look. You can see all of the questions that will be asked. You can fill out the answers within the Word document yourself. And then when it goes to actually inputting those questions or the answers on the application online, you have all of that there, and it's a little bit easier than the website can be a little. This is something you'd like to. So this page shows you everything that will be asked for you to submit with your application. So in addition to the questions that are embedded in the application itself, you will be asked to include different attachments. Yes. Oh, sure. Sorry about that. We'll reshare. All right, how's it looking? Okay, perfect. Okay. So we will go through all of these different attachments through in the application itself. But one thing I do want to draw your attention to is what will be attachment C. This is your financial worksheet that relates to the level of application that you are submitting. So if you are submitting a level 1 application, you would download the Excel file that's related to level 1, level 2, and level 3, and so on. Today, I'm going to run us through a level 2 application. So I myself am going to download this level 2 Excel file. Okay. Okay, and so for a level 2 application, this is the worksheet or the spreadsheet that you would be filling out. Just for comparison, I'll show you what a level 3 financial worksheet looks like. Okay, and so this is a level 3 financial worksheet. As you can see, it's much more involved. There's a lot more that is asked. So this is something that you might want to think about when you are determining which level you would like to complete. Level 1 is the most simple, simplified application. Level 2 expands from there. And then level 3 has the most expanded questions that are asked throughout the application. Okay. All right. Is that working on the WebEx now? Okay, perfect. All right, so now we are going to take a look at the application itself. And contrary to what we've said earlier in the presentation, if you do have questions throughout the demonstration with the application, it makes sense for you to ask some questions now so we don't have to go back to different sections and things like that. So if there is anything that comes up when we're going through the live demo, please feel free to raise your hand, or you can submit a question in the chat. We have someone who's monitoring that as well. Okay, so if I am a returning applicant, I'm going to submit a level 2 application. The first thing I want to do is I want to go to the application tab here. And I will need to log in. So as a returning applicant, if your organization has received funding from us in the past, you do have an account. So you might not know what that login is. If you don't know, but you know that your application or that your organization has submitted an application in the past, please reach out to us, let us know. I can easily get your username and reset the password and things like that if that needs to be done. Okay, so I am going to log in. Okay. And there are several different options that I can choose. As a returning applicant, I can either take a previous submission and I can update that information, which that means most of the information that I submitted in years prior will be in my application. So that's helpful if you don't want to, reinvent the wheel. You don't want to answer every single question again. If there haven't been a lot of large changes with your organization, that might be something that you want to do. If for some reason you would like to start fresh, you can do that as well. So I am going to run us through as a prior applicant who wants to update a previous submission. If you did want to start fresh, you can go to application. I don't know why it's not sharing. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go back to my account. Up here, once you log in, you have the options of editing your account. If you needed to update the email address or anything like that for any reason, you can do that here, the password as well. If I click over to submissions, I can see previous submissions that I have submitted in years prior. This is a good example of an application that one was in draft form. I am not going to choose an applicant or an application to update that's in draft form. I'm going to choose the most recent submitted, which is one that's the highest number that does not say draft. Okay, once I am here, if you do not have a copy of last year's application and you would like to have one, when you're in this form, you can right click, you can print, and you can save as a PDF. So this is if you would like record of your previous application before you start updating, because once you start updating the application, all that information will be replaced with the new information. If for some reason you forget that step, I really would like record of the past one, please let us know. We can access those for you. Okay. So now that if I'm ready for the 2027 application, I can click edit. And this is going to start me off on the first bubble, number 1. So this is, it looks like 27 steps. 27 steps if you are a level 3, it will take you through each page. If you are a level 1, it will skip certain pages that don't apply to you. If you're a level 2, it'll add certain pages, but you will not be filling out all 27. So if it looks daunting, it really depends on your level of application that you're submitting. So the first step really runs through those FAQs again. If there's anything you weren't quite sure with accessing the application or things that you need, it kind of runs through that information again. Okay. The next step will be the only application that we have currently on this platform is the Erie County Cultural Operating application. This step was only if we wanted to add a different application in there. So you don't have to worry about clicking anything else. The Erie County Cultural Funding application is your choice. Okay. And as you can see, now that I'm on page 3 of the application, it's going to start running through. It has my prior information that's already uploaded. So your legal name of your organization will be there, things like that. If anything needs to be updated, you can easily edit. If you're a new applicant, please say that if you're a new applicant, that will eliminate some questions that won't pertain to you. If you're a returning applicant, your answer will be no to new applicant. And here we are requesting that your website is input into our application here so that we can check you guys out. We can see some programming that you might have listed on your website or any resources, things like that. I will say this is very picky about how you put in the link. So make sure you go to the specific link itself. Let's see. So for instance, if I wanted to add our county website, I would have to highlight, I would copy, and I would paste directly from the website address itself. Okay. As I go through, you'll notice there are some areas that are blank. So you can leave things blank and go back to them. I'll show you how to do that throughout the application. I recommend as you're going through, anything that you can answer, please do, because once you go to submit the application, it will not let you, not have a mailing address or something like that. But you'll see that there are some blanks in my application. So please fill out things like mailing address, physical location, who your board president or chair are. If there's a secondary contact, please include that here as well. Please do the trainings. So most of this is about contact information, information that we need in order to send you your contract and things like that. So it's very important that you update it. If you do have a new board chair or something like that, just pay attention to those types of things, especially if you are updating an old application. All right, so something that we ask for in this application is a funding acknowledgement. So just some way that you have acknowledged that Erie County has provided you with the funds for previous years. That can be in the form of, a screenshot of your website. We've received, scans of brochures that people have put out there, or even videos that people have posted thanking Erie County for that type of funding. In order to replace in your application files, you'll want to make sure, so this was from 2026, since this funding is for 2027, you'll remove. choose file. And this specific file is attachment A. So I'll make sure that I'm including the correct attachment in the correct placement. Okay. And now I moved on to the next portion of the application, which is funding information. So throughout the application, you will see us referring to 2024 as the prior fiscal year or prior FY. 2025 is the most completed or most recently completed fiscal year, most recently completed FY. And 2026 is the current fiscal year. And 2027 is the next fiscal year. This section is where you will put in information about what your funding request is, as well as what level you would like to be completing. So if you are submitting for a level 1, it's any amount that is 50,000 or less. Level 2 is 50,000 to or above 50,000 to 200,000. Level 3 is beyond 200,000. So because we're running through a level 2 today, I'm choosing 57,000. I'm checking to make sure I'm completing a level 2 application. And after you put in your financial information, it'll ask you what the prior grant funds were used for. So again, if you're a new application or a new applicant, this section will not be relevant for you. It won't even appear on the application. As a returning applicant, we'll want to know what those funds were used for. If it's different than what the proposed funding was explained in your previous application, you can let us know, what those funds were used for that weren't explained in the application from last year. And then also the purpose of your 2027 funding request. So what do you anticipate the funds for the next year? What will they be used for? Will they be used for similar things? Or do you have any larger plans for your organization? This is a good spot for you to let us know, what those plans are and what the funding will be used for. Okay. Moving on, we have your organization's mission statement. So again, this needs to apply directly to the eligibility requirements for art and cultural organizations. As Pat mentioned, we want to make sure there isn't mission creep with organizations and that the funding is going directly to fund organizations whose primary mission is art and culture initiatives in Erie County. Okay. We will also ask questions about your financial information, including your 501c3 or 501c3 status when it was received, what your federal tax identification number is, when the CHAR 500 document was established. If for some reason you are lacking a CHAR 500, which is the document that you would receive from the New York State Charities Bureau, we just want to know why that is. There are certain instances where an organization, it does not apply. So please let us know. That would be something that your organization would know. We do need a CHAR 500 on file otherwise. If your organization has a surplus or deficit, this is where you would put in that information. This section is new or elaborated for level 2 applications. If you have a capital campaign or endowment, just some more information included there. If you do have an endowment, I believe in level 2, we used to ask just if you did and how much it was for. Now the board has requested a little bit more information on that. So you might see that as a change in your application. Okay, and a new section here is the Erie County Comptroller Monitoring Report. If your organization has been subject to a monitoring report, you can find out by clicking this link. So it's embedded in the application itself. And we will just be asking, if you have been subject to one, if the answer is yes. We want to know in the application, how has your organization responded to the monitoring report? What those findings might have been. The reviewer will be looking at the audit themselves to make sure what you included in your application matches that as well. Okay, so your financial documents. So these are things, let's see. This is where you will upload things like your tax filings. Your CHAR 500 should be included with that. If I know in previous years, CHAR 500s were included with the tax filings to your organization, it's something now that the organization has access to. So it might be something that you need to go on the New York State Charities Bureau website and contact them to receive if you do not have your current CHAR 500. So again, I'm going to be replacing my financial documents. The financial worksheet that we downloaded from the application website will go into attachment C. Okay. And then your tax filing is attachment D. And just to note, as returning applicants, you may already be aware of this, but we do have a specific naming convention for these attachments. So it will be of your organization and whatever the attachment letter is that corresponds with that document, and then the funding year, so 2027. Okay, so next will be more about your governance documents, so your bylaws. In level 2, we do ask that you identify, where specific portions are in your document itself. So things like, where is your mission and purpose, what page number, where is the membership definition, the number of consecutive terms that are permitted for board members, things like that. So if you are submitting a level 1, it's not as detailed, but for levels 2 and 3, we do ask that you identify specifically in those documents where those specific statements are listed. Next governance document, governance document that you'll be submitting is your conflict of interest policy. So for all of your board members and an executive director, if you have one, they should be submitting conflict of interest documents every year. So your policy will be submitted with the application as well as their signed conflict of interest forms. So on your form, something that we've wanted to clarify with applicants. If a conflict exists, that's okay. The conflict of interest policy is identified and conflicts can be dealt with. So if you have board members who do not submit their conflict of interest forms, please make sure that you have those before you submit your application. So that is something common, at least with last year's applications, that we were going back and forth with organizations, making sure that the number of board members that they had matched the number of conflict of interest forms that were submitted. Okay, so similarly to the bylaws, it goes line per line. The information that we're looking for in your conflict of interest form, you want to make sure that you're adding in the page number that those statements are included. Okay. And lastly, for governance documents, your whistleblower policy, so similar to the bylaws and the conflict of interest, each of your board members will need to show that they have acknowledgement of the whistleblower policy, they have signed, and they know that it exists, they know what those procedures are. Okay. And so in this section, again, you'll be replacing those documents. So your bylaws will be included, or updated bylaws too is important, as Pat mentioned earlier. Sometimes we'll receive bylaws that are out of date. Maybe it's just from not updating them from year to year, but please make sure that if you do have updated bylaws, those are included. I will mention, so bylaws are attachment F. There is no attachment E. So I know when I began doing reviews last year, I wasn't quite sure, where attachment E was. It goes straight from D to F. So just to avoid any confusion there. Okay, attachment G is your conflict of interest policy and the signed conflict of interest forms from each board member and any key person that's within your organization. So that would be an executive director. Okay. Attachment H is your whistleblower policy and signed forms from your board members showing that they've acknowledged the whistleblower policy. Okay, so before I move on to the board of directors information and things like that, does anyone have any questions before we move on? We went over some of the financial documents, the governance documents. Okay. Anything with the chat? Okay, great. Okay, so next is your board of directors. So each of your organizations has a board, and each of their names will go in as well as the year they were elected, the year their term ends, and total consecutive years that they have served. If there's an officer position, you can put that in here as well. In order to add more rows, you can click add. If for some reason you go beyond the amount of rows that you need, you can delete on this side. Okay. And again, self-explanatory, but you'll put in things like the number of board members, the number of conflict interest disclosure forms collected. So again, this should match the number of board members that you have, as well as any key persons that are within your organization. Please include your number of independent directors. So these are members who do not have a conflict of interest. If you have board members with conflict of interest, again, that's fine. But we do want to know how many of your members do not have a conflict of interest, and that would be your independent members. The number of board meetings with a quorum present. And an additional section for this page is regarding the diversity and inclusion within your organization, within your board itself. So for instance, if you have several board members who are female, let's say you have 4 board members that are female. Oops. If you have, 2 who identify as LGBTQIA, if you have 2 male, there is a section for characteristics not listed above. So if there's anything that is not included within this demographic chart itself, you can include that there. Oh, and be careful. I have noticed with this, for whatever reason, if you start to scroll, it might change your number. So it's a good thing to go back and make sure that these are correct. Okay. And then in addition to the demographic diversity of your board, we also want to know competencies and skills that they do have. So there are a number of categories that you can categorize your board members if they have financial skills. If you have one who is has a financial background, if you have two that are lawyers or work in a legal capacity. A common error that we see is sometimes organizations will put in names of their board members for each of these. We really just need numbers. You don't need to identify who. That was the other way around. You do want names. Okay. Sorry about that. So instead of numbers, that's right. Correct. So instead of just numbers for that, for your demographics, you can just put in, the numbers for the specific competencies. You'll want to name that person. That's true. So that if, there is a member who has, background in many different things, they're not just the only, person on your board who you're relying on for all of those competencies. So in addition to what's listed in the application, if there's anything else that you would like to let us know about your board diversity, something that we've seen in the past is age diversity, if you have young members and older members, religious diversity, that's not included in our chart, geographic diversity, if your members are from all over Erie County, that's something that you can add in for additional information. So we want to make sure we have a section for, thinking outside the box. We don't want to just include the demographic and competencies. If there's anything else, please let us know here. Okay. So this, we'll want to know the committees of your board. So if you have any committees that aren't inclusive of just board members, please include those here. If you have committees of the corporation, that can include members who are not just on your board. Okay, our next section is on workforce. So if you are an organization who pays staff, who pays, people who do your programming, if you're paying musicians, if you're paying actors, anything like that, that information will be included here as paid workforce. So you'll include previous fiscal year amounts here, and then your current budget. So that's 2026. Previous is 2025, and then current fiscal year to date. If you have any volunteers within your organization, you can include them in unpaid workforce. So we want to make sure that with this application that we're receiving, who might be receiving funding or who is being paid, by your organization, but also, volunteers who, volunteer their time and really help a lot of these organizations get their programming out there. So in addition, there's always a section that you can provide additional information if there's anything you would like us to know about your workforce, including, demographic or again, competency information, you can include that here. Okay, go ahead. I would say anyone who is paid by your organization should be included in those counts. So for anyone who didn't hear that, it was like how fine grained or how specific do you need to be on, see, there it is, the paid workforce numbers. If you have things like consultants or really anyone who's being paid by your organization should be included in this section. Yes. I apologize to everyone online. I'm not sure why the screen does not want to share today, or at least stay shared. Okay. All right. Does anyone here have any questions? Okay, so a requirement of level 2 and level 3 applications is a strategic plan. So this will show your reviewer really where you see your organization moving in 2027. And for a level 1 applicant, it is not required, but it's always good if you do have one to receive some extra bonus points by submitting a strategic plan. So this is for level 2 and level 3. This will appear in your application. You can submit the strategic plan here. If you're a level 1 applicant who has a strategic plan, you can submit it as attachment Z, which will show you at the end what that looks like. That's really for any additional information that you want included in the application that wasn't previously asked about. So because I'm submitting a level 2, I'm going to remove my prior year's strategic plan. I'm going to re-upload my strategic plan here. Okay, so in addition to the demographic and competency information that we were requesting for your board and for your workforce, in addition, we do want to know if your organization has any examples of racial justice, of economic justice, and of environmental justice. So again, these sections are optional. If it is something that your organization is practicing, we would just love to know about it. We'd love to know that Erie County funding is going towards organizations who are practicing these types of things. We do have some examples here too, just to kind of come up with some things for some people. You might be practicing these things and not even knowing it. So for racial justice in particular, some examples could be that you have a prominent DEI statement, you're actively inviting and welcoming individuals from different racial backgrounds to participate in programs and take leadership roles, you're relocating to or making an effort to serve historically disadvantaged communities. As far as economic justice, some examples of that could be pay-as-you-can days. If you have any sort of lower admission days, things like that, that would be great to include here. If you have any free programming or even free resources online, that could be an example that you might include here as well. If you participate in ASI's Art Access Pass, that would be a great thing to include for the economic justice portion as well. And then environmental justice. So this one, if you are using any sort of sustainable materials in your organization or within your facility, as far all the way up to, if you have, moved into a building, that you have renovated and it is in, historically disadvantaged community or something like that. So these are all, again, we just want to know if your organization is practicing these types of things. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it is nice to know. Okay, this section is your programs table. So here we want to know the different types of programming that you provide throughout the year. So for the previous or current fiscal year, you'll include things like the different types of programs that you have put on with your organization. If you do something daily, we're not expecting you to put in, every single date that program is going on. You can give us, more of a wide range. If you have, let's say, a play that your organization puts on, you can put in, the date range that play is going on, what the event was, where the event was located, what geographic location the event was located, your in-person attendance. If you had any virtual attendance, you can put that here as well. And then what was the source of that count? Did you, have people sign in? Did you do ticket sales? If it was virtual, did you keep an attendance list, on Zoom, something like that? And similarly to the other tables within the application, in order to add more columns, you can hit the add button. If you know that you need, let's say, 5 more, you could put in the number 5 and hit add. Oh, maybe don't do that. I would maybe just add one by one as you go through the application. I remember that happening last year. I'm not sure what the bug is there. Okay. Oh, actually, I did want to make one more comment on the programs table. So something else, it's listed in here, but if you do have social media or website traffic for your organization, you can include that as a separate line in your programming. So some people will include, interactions that they've had on Facebook or interactions that they've had on social media. So again, it's just good data. It's something that if you do include, we'd like to know, all of that kind of stuff, the public interacting with your organization that way. Okay. So in addition to your programming, so something that we want to know that compiles into your impact for your organization is your audience and community. So we want to know a narrative on the population that you've served. If you're embedded in a certain community, please let us know. If you are an organization that facilitates programming for all of Erie County, please let us know that as well. Okay. So here we want you to describe the efforts being taken to cultivate and broaden your So the efforts taken to cultivate and broaden, your audience, efforts to reach underserved audiences, and progress made to increase audience diversity in the last 2 to 3 years. So if you are trying to expand your organization's programming into other communities or things like that, just let us know. You can write a narrative here. So there's many opportunities within this application for you to describe if you wish to reach different audiences or things like that, or additional information that you think is pertinent to your funding. Lastly, on this page is accessibility. So something that we want to keep track of with these applications is the accessibility efforts within the organization. So if you are providing ways for those who are have physical disabilities to attend your organizations, sometimes organizations will let us know that they have autism nights where it's more of a sensory acceptable or sensory friendly activity. So things like that. Okay. And so now we are in the additional information section. So right here is really, it's up to you. You can provide a narrative, describe a little bit more as to, if there's anything in the application that you think we haven't covered or you would like to let us know pertaining to the funding. You can put that in this additional information section. And then lastly, we have attachment Z. So if you were a level 1 applicant, this again, this could be where you put in your strategic plan. If you have some, marketing materials that you think we should take a look at, or if you have, any other plans within your organization that would be, good for the reviewer to see, this would be the section where you would include it. So it's really anything that you think additionally that you would like to show, or, brag about your organization, anything like that, you can include that here. All right, and I did not have an attachment C, so I will just include a file to serve its place. Okay. All right, so when you get to this section of the application, it is very important. If you are not ready to submit, there is a little checkbox that says the 2027 funding application is updated and ready for review. If this box is checked, it will get sent directly to my office, and we will start, downloading your attachments and things like that. We'll take a look at your application. So if it's not ready for review, if you were, you went through it, but you want to take a look at it again, you want someone else in your organization to take a look at it, you will uncheck the box. You will preview. Okay. So this warning message at the bottom is letting you know that your application is not going to be submitted yet. So you can go through, you can take a look at all of your responses. You can see if anything was left blank. Okay. And down below, because we were not ready to submit, we unchecked that box. You can hit save. Okay. And your application is saved within your submissions. So I'll even show you if we go back to your account. Okay. You go to your submissions. Okay. This one right here, submission 304. This will have all of the saved information from today's session. So when you are ready to submit, unfortunately, I'll show you a little bit long of a process because you do need to go back through each of the pages. You can go back from pages, but you cannot go forward. Okay. All right, while I keep going through this, does anyone have any questions regarding the application? Or Mary Ellie, did you have anything to add? Okay. Yeah.
If this is too detailed, compared to financial worksheet, I know the financials, but I always struggle with, okay, we have prior years, which I theory should match up with your review statements or values, which is going to include all of the designated donations and projects and all that. And then you have your budget, which is typically an operating budget, so it has that column. Now we have the action date for 2000, in this case, 2025. In our case, we have a lot of big projects taken into account. And so what I'm always confused is whether I need to strip out, I don't know if you can answer this now or I should call. I should somehow try to strip out all those donor designated donations to these projects and of course the project expenses. Then match up somehow with the budget, which really is a whole distortion. In some cases, it's double.
I don't believe so. I think you're fine, but you might want to tell us in the additional information why they don't.
Where do I do that?
So we happen, say we are on.
It's like page 20, 5 or something like that.
There's someplace for notes.
Yeah, so that very last page that you can input an attachment. There's also a narrative section where you can let us know additional information. If there's anything funny in your application, you want to, provide some explanation, that would be a great section for that.
Yeah, it's historic.
Right.
I think everybody would get.
Can you pass that into the question on the?
Yeah, so from the chat, I do have one question and then.
Yes. Sure.
Apologies. So the question was whether if your budget or your actual doesn't match your budget, if you have to strip out the differences. We say no, you can just leave it as is. And then in the additional information, which is usually page like 25 or something like that, towards the end, in the additional information text box, you can explain why it's different.
And then the other question was going back to the workforce question before. Is one consultant firm equal one paid workforce, or is one consultant firm a four-member team?
So if it's a consultant firm and 3 people from that 50-person firm worked on your project, include 3, not all 50 that work for the firm, please. Thank you. Any other questions in the room? I know it can seem really overwhelming for anyone who hasn't done it before, but again, this was a level 2 application, so it's much bigger than the level 1. And then the level 3 asks for even more details. So don't let that intimidate you. And once you actually get into it, you'll see it's a little more straightforward than when they seem like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the reviewers, when they review your applications, feel the same way when they're new. They're very intimidated by having to review all this information. And as they get into it, they see your story and your work, and it makes a lot more sense.
So this is that page, just to draw attention to it, for a moment, where you would put in that additional information.
Oh, it's it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that is a good point, though. If there is anything that you go through the application and you want to make note of, might be worth just jotting down so that you know that you can include it in that final section.
And was your question about attachment C, the Excel worksheet, more specifically, or in general? Mhm.
Well, it's a financial worksheet.
Okay.
And
Since it's
the main issue with the financial worksheet is that sort of, in one case, we want our budget, and it's never going to match up with the budget because it's only operating expenses and revenue. And so when it goes to try to match it up with, say, the 990s prior years, or your, say, QuickBooks, cash base, it's gonna look completely out of line because it includes all of these projects and those designated. It doesn't put your budget. So my question was, should I somehow try to strip that out? But I'm going to do what you suggested. Just explain.
Yep. And because it is an Excel worksheet, you can write it in that sheet as well under the table if you want.
Yeah.
But if it's easier to put it in the additional information at the end, you can do that as well.
Because it's easy to identify. Especially QuickBooks.
Any other questions here? Anything else in the chat? Okay, let me cover.
I was just going to mention, just once you are ready, once you've gone through, you're ready to submit, click this checkbox. Preview one more time. Okay. Down at the bottom, now it says 2027 funding application is updated and ready for review. Yes. You'll click save. Okay. And you should receive by the email that is registered with your account, just confirmation that your application has been submitted. I will receive the application on my end. If for any reason until everything is ready to go. last but not least, for the application's sake, there is a survey at the bottom. It's optional for the Erie County Historical Commission. If there's anything that your organization is doing with regards to historical activities this year for the 250th anniversary, we want to know, and we want to see if any cultural organizations are participating.
Just a couple things.
Yes, absolutely. Do you need the access to the application?
I might as well leave it just
Sure.
in case. Okay. So just a quick few points. Obviously, we're asking you for a lot of information, especially in level 2 and 3. And part of asking you, for example, where in your bylaws is this type of thing, is so you are doing a bit of a self-assessment. If it's not in your bylaws, you probably should be looking to add that, because these are either best practices or required by law. Not just the bylaws, but the conflict of interest policy and disclosures and the whistleblower policies. So that's why, part of why we have you like go through it line by line. And then I wanted to clarify that all the questions are required, but some don't have the little red asterisk, so you can keep working on other parts of the application and come back to it. The ones that have the little red asterisk will not let you advance to the next page unless you answer them, but all the questions are required. Some might not apply to your organization, in which case you can say not applicable or whatever, but if you leave them blank, we'll have to kick it back because we don't know if you've completed it, since all the questions are required. And then on the demographics table, if you have 10 people on your board, 5 are male, 5 are female, and 3 are LGBTQ, your numbers will add up on the table to 13 because someone is female and LGBTQ. So they don't have to match to number of people, but the characteristics that are represented in your board. Same with race and ethnicity. And I think that's the main two. I think that was it. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Any questions in the chat?
So first question is, can you clarify how to request feedback on strengths and weaknesses?
Sure. So the question is on clarifying how to request feedback. So for last year's application, if you would like to receive feedback, please reach out to us. I have some business cards. I'll also put up a screen with my contact information here. Please reach out. We can go through the review of your application last year, and just we can take a look and see, where the reviewer some growth and what was really strong with your application as well. All right, I will put up that contact info. Okay. All right. Here it is. We will be here for a couple more minutes. If anyone in the room, has any additional questions that you'd like answered. Oh, I'm sorry, more from the chat. Go ahead.
So will there be opportunities for new nonprofit organizations to apply for these grants this year, or is it the post?
No, so the question was if new nonprofits can still apply. Yes. Obviously, the sooner rather than later would be great, especially if you're a new applicant. But if you are interested, please visit our website, erie.gov/cultural, and take a look at the eligibility requirements. And if you think that your organization would be the correct fit, then submit an account request. Your information will get sent right to me, and we'll be in contact about creating your account.
And then this one, in the allowable uses, what is considered acceptable fringe benefits? Did we do that? What is considered acceptable fringe benefits? What is considered acceptable fringe benefits?
Okay, so the question's about fringe benefits, what would be acceptable. So anything that would fall under your employment package, such as like salary and benefits and things like that.
If there's a more technical question, then they can tell us anything.
Yeah, exactly. If you do have more technical questions, or if there's anything specific to your organization that you'd like to discuss, please reach out.
And then final question, if we do not have a conflict of interest policy in place but are working on it, does this prevent our organization from applying?
So we do need a conflict of interest policy submitted with your application, as well as the signed conflict of interest forms. This ensures that we know that your board members and or key persons in your organization are in compliance with your organization and can represent, and with New York state law, exactly. That's it. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for everyone who's online. By the end of this week. So if you need to revisit it for any reason, it'll be posted there. And please reach out with any questions. We look forward to your applications for the 2027 funding.